An Australian software house wants to subcontract the coding of the user interface to an American developer. The problem is, the UI needs to access the corporate database, which cannot be given to him. So they use SkyBridge Proxy DLL to solve this problem. For this demo, I created two VMs. The first is the computer of the Australian business. By doing an IP lookup, you can see it is physically located in Australia. The HR software has three projects. This one defines the business objects, which includes employee and team. This one is the user interface, which they want to subcontract to the American developer. The data access project is the one, which they can't give to the subcontractor. The database class stores the data in a text file. The second VM is in the US. It is the American developer's computer. The source code of the user interface project, and the business objects project, has been supplied to him, but not the data access project, so the compiler complains that it doesn't know about class data access. Now let's set up the SkyBridge Proxy DLL environment on the Australian developer's computer. I will use a stopwatch to see how long it takes to finish the setup. First we go to SkyBridge's website. We go to the Proxy DLL page. Scroll down to download. We pause the stopwatch to show you the unzipped files. Amongst the binary files, those that starts with original DLL computer, are to be used on this computer, which has the original DLL. Those that starts with proxy DLL computer, are to be used on the American developer's computer, which has the proxy DLL. Now, let's start the configuration manager for the original DLL computer. We use the free and anonymous option so we don't need to register an account. We select the original DLL, which is the data access DLL. We want to generate a proxy DLL from it, and give it to the American developer. Then, we create an auto-deployment target for the American developer's computer. We generate a target ID. We enter a name for that target. We add the target. Then, we select a target framework to generate the proxy DLL, and save the settings. Lastly, we install the backend process Windows service and start the service. That's it. We finished configuring the Australian developer's computer. It takes only 2.5 minutes to set up the original DLL computer. Now let's set up the American developer's computer. We start the stopwatch. We download the same SkyBridge Proxy DLL software. We start the configuration manager for the Proxy DLL computer. Again, we use the free and anonymous option. We go back to the Australian computer to copy the target ID. And paste it into the target ID text box. We save the settings. We start the backend process Windows service. Then, we wait for the backend process of the Australian computer to establish contact with this computer via the SkyBridge cloud service and send the automatically generated proxy DLL to this computer. We keep refreshing the UI. The proxy DLL has been received. The desired location text box is flashing, asking you to tell the backend process where to save it. So we click the Change button and pick a location. We want to put the proxy DLL into the bin folder of the user interface. Now, let's go to Visual Studio and add reference to this proxy DLL. Then we add new get reference to two SkyBridge libraries. That's it. We finished setting up the American developer's computer. It took only 2 minutes. It took less than 5 minutes to set up both computers. Now let's verify the magic is really magic. Note that the last employee is Simon. On the Australian developer's computer, the last employee is also Simon. Now let's add a new employee, James. We go back to the American developer's computer. And do a refresh. The last employee is now James. Now we add a new user, Joanna. We go back to the Australian developer's computer. And do a refresh. The last employee is now Joanna. We verified that both computers are accessing the same database. Now let's look at the auto deployment of the proxy DLL, which is automatic and transparent. The Australian developer decides to add a new parameter to a function in the data access original DLL. Then he compiles. Now, we go to the American developer's PC, stop the app, and wait for the auto deployment to happen. It takes 15 to 20 seconds. This red underline indicates that, after the new proxy DLL has been deployed, we can no longer compile. If we add that extra parameter, then we can compile and run.